In the middle of the night, a woman set up the house's security system and fell asleep, thinking everything was safe. But she had no idea two men had already slipped inside, moving quietly from the front door to the back, searching for a way in. They finally broke through an access panel and shut down the surveillance system. But the woman didn't wake up. One of the men, Burnham, kept searching the house and paused when he saw a young girl asleep. A strange unease filled his face, but he moved on and peeked into the master bedroom. The woman was lying still, pretending to be asleep, but Burnham didn't know that. He left to open the front door for his partner, Junior. Burnham tried to warn Junior that something wasn't right, but Junior didn't care. He just waved him off and brought in a third man named Raoul, who wore a ski mask to hide his face. Burnham, getting nervous, asked who Raoul was, but Junior just said Raoul was experienced. Everything changed when Junior realized someone had moved into the house which was previously been owned by his granddad. He had messed up the timing, thinking the house was still empty. Burnham was furious. They were caught on camera, and now the woman and her daughter were inside, which wasn't supposed to happen. Burnham wanted to leave, but Junior told him they needed the $3 million in the safe and reminded him why he agreed to do this. Burnham gave in, but only after making sure they cut the phone lines. Meanwhile, the woman finally noticed something was wrong. As she stepped into the hallway, she saw 3 shadows sneaking up the stairs, and a basketball got knocked over. The realization shocked her. Terrified, she grabbed her daughter and tried to escape, but Raoul was already waiting upstairs. He chased them, but they managed to reach the elevator. Her daughter, Sarah, stayed calm and reminded her mom to hit the emergency stop. As the elevator rose again, Junior and Raoul rushed up the stairs to catch them. Just in time, the woman and her daughter made it into the panic room, slamming the door shut. Junior lost it. He grabbed the bed and flipped it over, sending a phone crashing to the floor. A few days earlier, in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, Meg Altman arrived with her young daughter Sarah and their realtor Lydia to tour a townhouse. Lydia rushed Meg to act quickly, saying the house would be gone soon. They were met by Evan, the agent showing the place, who didn't hide his frustration about Lydia being late. Inside, the house was big and quiet, filled with empty rooms and high ceilings. When they reached the 3rd floor, Evan asked Meg about her life. She mentioned she was going back to school at Columbia. Lydia added that her husband worked in pharmaceuticals, but Meg gently corrected her as she was no longer married. Evan said nothing and kept walking, leading them into the master bedroom. Meg slowed down as something about the room felt off. It didn't look the right size, and Evan raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. He moved a tall mirror aside to reveal a hidden doorway. Behind it was a small room with thick concrete walls, cold metal shelves, and screens showing the entire house. It was a panic room, built to keep the owners safe during a break-in. It had its own air system, a backup phone line, and a heavy steel door that worked even during power outages. Meg stepped in, unsure what to think. The room made her nervous. Evan showed how the door locked from the inside with the press of a button, and sealed them in as a demonstration. When he opened it again, Sarah was waiting just outside, eyes wide with excitement. She stepped inside right away and called it her room. Meg wasn't convinced, calling the door dangerous, but Evan showed how it had sensors that stopped it from closing if anything got in the way. When he pressed the button again, the mirror slid back into place, hiding the panic room completely. Even with her doubts, Meg and Sarah had moved into the big, empty house. Back in the present, Meg sat in the panic room with her daughter Sarah, trying to stay strong as the danger outside grew closer. Downstairs, Junior was pacing nervously, but Burnham told him he had locked the roof door, trapping the mother and daughter with no way out. He added that Meg couldn't have connected the panic room phone because it needed to go through his security company, and the paperwork showed it was still inactive. Knowing they might try to force their way in, Meg used the panic room speaker to bluff, warning the men that police were on their way. But when they didn't react, she changed tactics and told them to take what they wanted and leave. Junior responded with a note, saying what they wanted was inside the panic room. He then offered to let her go, but Meg cut off the communication, making him angry and impatient. Outside the room, the men began drilling and blocking doors to keep them trapped, while inside, Sarah dug through the emergency supplies in a panic. Meg told her to stop, but when Sarah didn't listen, she snapped, yelling loud enough to bring her daughter back to focus. Then a noise came from the floor below. They both dropped down and listened. Raoul was smashing the ceiling with a sledgehammer, trying to break through from underneath while Junior watched. Burnham stormed in, furious, but when he saw how pointless the plan was, he walked away. That's when he noticed a propane tank outside. He grabbed it, brought it in, and connected it to the panic room's ventilation system. Junior told him to open the valve. Burnham did, but Raoul wasn't satisfied and took over, releasing even more gas. Burnham hesitated, saying they were just supposed to scare the woman, but Raoul ignored him completely, pushing the danger further than planned. Back in the panic room, Meg told Sarah to get down as she checked the vents. But the moment she leaned in, a rush of propane gas hit her face, making her cough hard. They were running out of time, so Meg dug through the supplies, desperate for anything that could help them breathe. Sarah spotted a small pipe and called out, and together they used it to breathe in fresher air. Outside, Burnham warned Junior that they needed Meg and Sarah alive to open the room, but Raoul kept releasing gas. Junior shouted for him to stop, but Raoul didn't care. Meg kept searching through the boxes and finally found a small torch. Sarah, now scared, tried to stop her, but Meg calmly told her to get under the fireproof blanket. She covered herself with another one, held the torch up to the vent, and lit the gas. A huge blue flame exploded through the air, throwing Meg back and blowing the men off their feet. The propane tank spun wildly as fire shot out. Junior screamed in pain as part of his arm and face burned, and Burnham quickly threw a cloth over the wounds. After the blast, Sarah found a flashlight. She crawled back to the pipe and saw a neighbor across the street sleeping. She started flashing the light in an SOS pattern, hoping he would see. Meanwhile, Raoul dragged Junior downstairs to talk privately. As Sarah kept signaling, she got upset because the man still wasn't waking up. Meg glanced at Sarah's glucose watch and saw the sugar level dropping fast, which meant her daughter could get sick soon. At the stairs, Raoul told Junior he wanted a third of the money, and Junior, too tired to fight, agreed and mocked him for his mask and the cash. Finally, the neighbor woke up and looked outside, but instead of understanding the signal, he just pulled down his blinds and walked away. Meg and Sarah screamed for help through the heavy rain, but no one heard them. While Junior ranted about how everything was his plan, Burnham stood near the door, listening. Meg checked the camera again and noticed the men had left the bedroom. That's when she remembered her phone was still by the bed. She told Sarah to shut the panic room door if she didn't return, then ran. She rushed into the bedroom and dove for the bedside table, but the mattress was flipped and in the way. Meg dropped to the floor, reached under the bed, and finally grabbed the phone. But when she knocked the lamp over, the noise alerted the men. As they raced back up the stairs, Meg bolted for the panic room, and Sarah slammed the door shut just in time, locking the men out once again. Meg felt a rush of panic when she saw her phone had no signal. But she remembered the main phone line she had reconnected earlier, so if they could reach it, they still had hope. Downstairs, Burnham heard a faint noise and went to check the source, but suddenly the wires vanished into the wall. Meg had ripped them out just in time. Burnham cursed and dashed downstairs. Inside the panic room, Meg and Sarah quickly got a dial tone. They dialed 911 but were put on hold. Realizing time was running out, Sarah suggested calling her dad, and Meg agreed. She got through to Stephen and began to explain everything, but right then Raoul smashed the power panel with his sledgehammer, cutting the line before Meg could give details. Meg was now on edge and snapped for a moment, but quickly calmed herself and apologized. Sarah looked pale and finally admitted she was dizzy and hungry. Her blood sugar was dropping, and Meg knew they had to act fast. Outside, Junior paced in frustration, talking about giving up and anonymously tipping off the police so they would find the safe and take care of everything. As he kept talking about his inheritance, Burnham and Raoul exchanged a look, realizing the safe probably held much more than they thought. Burnham became angry that Junior had been planning to keep secrets. Junior fired back, blaming Burnham's greed and family issues for dragging them into this mess. But when he tried to walk away, Raoul raised his gun and shot Junior straight in the head. Inside, Meg searched the supplies for anything with sugar. Sarah quietly pointed at the monitor, and when Meg looked, she froze. Horrified, she shielded Sarah's eyes as Raoul dragged Junior's body back and fired another shot just to be sure. Suddenly a man's voice called out at the front door. Raoul rushed to meet him, pointed his gun, and forced the man inside. When Burnham stepped forward to help, Raoul ordered him back and slammed the stranger in the face with his gun. Burnham tried to stop the madness, but Raoul threatened him again. They checked the man's wallet and found out he was Stephen Altman, Meg's ex-husband. Raoul asked if he had called the police, and Stephen said no. Raoul seemed sure he was telling the truth because he believed no one lies when staring down a gun. He turned to Burnham and told him to figure out how to break into the panic room, counting down with no intention of waiting. Inside the panic room, Sarah sat quietly, trying to stay calm, but then something on the screen made Meg's heart race. Burnham held Stephen's ID up to the camera, and Meg gasped in fear. Sarah looked over and froze when Raoul started pretending to beat up her dad. Burnham told him to open the door, but Stephen, bruised and weak, yelled that they should not. Raoul slammed a lamp into his face and kept kicking him even after he dropped. Meg could only scream as Burnham finally pushed Raoul away and covered the camera with his jacket. Suddenly, Sarah's glucometer beeped. She started shaking, and Meg rushed to hold her steady and keep her calm. When the seizure passed, Meg checked the monitors and saw Burnham dragging someone who looked knocked out down the stairs. It looked like Raoul, but something didn't feel right. Meg tucked Sarah in with a pillow and gently kissed her forehead before slipping out to get her medicine. She spotted Stephen lying unconscious on the bed, then rushed to Sarah's room for the medication. That's when she realized the truth. The person Burnham dragged away was Stephen, and Raoul had only been pretending to be him. Meg's fear burned away. She grabbed the meds and crept back toward the panic room but paused when she heard Raoul and Burnham whispering. Burnham entered the panic room and looked at Sarah, who was curled up and shivering on the ground. He looked unsure and filled with guilt. Meg continued down the stairs, then suddenly burst through a door that knocked Raoul off balance. She ran toward the panic room, but Burnham startled her as he opened the door. Before she could enter, Raoul grabbed her from behind, and the medicine pouch dropped to the floor. They fought until Meg shoved Raoul backward and he stumbled into the panic room. Burnham acted fast and slammed the door. Just before it closed, Meg managed to push the medicine pouch inside. Raoul reached to block it but got his hand caught between the heavy door and the frame. He screamed as the steel door sealed shut, locking him in. Burnham refused to open the panic room door because he believed Meg had his gun. Meg overheard him and quickly grabbed Raoul's gun from the floor. Burnham called out, saying he knew she had it, but Meg rushed to a security panel and demanded that he give Sarah her shot. When Burnham didn't respond, Meg screamed, which finally pushed him to act. Nervous, he asked Sarah what would happen if she didn't get her injection. Sarah, pale and shivering, weakly said she would fall into a coma and die. Burnham told Meg to drop the gun and go downstairs. She ran but didn't let go of the gun. Burnham still opened the door, and Meg tried to get back inside quickly. But the door shut before she could reach it, and now Raoul's hand was free. Even though he was in terrible pain, he warned Meg that he would hurt Sarah if she did anything reckless. Exhausted and terrified, Meg begged them to just give her daughter the shot. Burnham sat Sarah up and gave her the injection. He muttered about wanting to raise his kids in a place like this and said things weren't supposed to end up like this. Sarah, slowly feeling better, whispered a thank you. When Burnham confirmed the shot was done, Meg went to the bedroom and found Stephen. She was shocked by his bloody face and asked if he could move. Stephen said his arm might be broken. Meanwhile, Burnham started working on the safe. Meg helped Stephen raise his arm and handed him the gun. He warned her not to do anything foolish because he believed they would hurt Sarah if she made a mistake. Suddenly, they heard a knock. The police were at the front door. Stephen admitted he had called them because Meg's call scared him. Meg put on a sweater and signaled to the camera that she would handle it. When she opened the door, she acted sleepy and confused. Officer Kinney asked about the call. Meg lied and tried to explain it away, but Kinney looked skeptical. He softly said she could blink a few times if she felt unsafe. Meg froze for a second, pretending to think, then told him everything was fine. The police left. Burnham returned to cracking the safe while Raoul sat in pain. Meg took this chance. She grabbed a sledgehammer and started smashing the security cameras one by one. Sarah watched quietly and slipped her medicine into her pocket. Meg helped Stephen, who was still weak in his chair near the window, and handed him a lamp to hold. Meanwhile, Burnham finally cracked open the safe, and inside were 22 bank bonds worth $22 million. He quickly stuffed them inside his jacket and promised Sarah she would be fine. Then the three of them left the panic room, with Raoul gripping Sarah's shirt tightly to keep control. Burnham tried to open the main doors but found them all locked. Therefore, they moved downstairs searching for a way out. But before they could go far, Stephen suddenly pointed the lamp at them, his gun aimed at Burnham. In response, Raoul dragged Sarah behind a wall. Stephen, still bleeding and barely holding himself up, told them to let his daughter go. Raoul showed himself but refused to release Sarah. However, Meg quietly came from behind them with a sledgehammer in her hands. When Sarah saw her, she quickly moved away so Meg could swing the hammer, hitting Raoul hard and sending him tumbling down the stairs. Burnham immediately ran and slipped out of sight. But Raoul, though injured, pushed himself back up the stairs. Stephen tried to shoot him, but with shaky hands and pain, he missed every time. Raoul tackled Meg and began punching Stephen, knocking him off the chair and forcing him to drop the gun. Stephen cried out, and Burnham, just steps away from escaping, heard him and stopped. Raoul picked up the sledgehammer to steady himself and then grabbed Meg. He pinned her to the ground and tried to choke her. Meg struggled with everything she had, but Raoul slammed her head against the floor, nearly knocking her out. Seeing this, Sarah ran at him and stabbed him over and over with her injection needle to save her mom. But Raoul struck Sarah in the face, sending her flying to the fireplace. She screamed as Raoul picked up the sledgehammer again, ready to end it. Meg, now conscious, watched helplessly. Just before Raoul could bring it down on her, Burnham appeared and shot Raoul in the head, finally ending it. Burnham looked at Sarah and told her she would be okay. He dropped the gun and quietly walked out into the rainy yard. But as he did, sirens screamed and the SWAT team stormed the house with Officer Kinney leading them. Burnham tried to escape but quickly found himself surrounded. They shouted at him to step back from the fence. He obeyed and dropped to his knees, having the bonds in his hands. When the officer told him to open his palms, Burnham did so. The wind caught the bonds and scattered them everywhere, turning millions into worthless scraps that floated like garbage into the night. Sometime later, Meg sat on a park bench with Sarah lying across her lap. They flipped through a newspaper together, quietly searching for a new place to live.